Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we thank everyone who has taken some time to listen to the podcast today. We do understand that you could be utilizing your time to do something else, so we are appreciative of you spending that time equity with us. As always, if this information is valuable and you do feel it to be enlightening, we do ask that you subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll be notified when each episode is released. We put out a new episode each and every Friday, which can be heard on all podcast platforms. And then we also put out a video on YouTube each and every Wednesday for those of you who would like to watch the podcast. In addition, when you do subscribe to the podcast, it assists us because it allows our distributors to get a understanding of who our audience is. And then in turn, they are more likely to distribute and share our podcast to even more audiences. And then that way, everyone can benefit from this, or more people can benefit from this information. And like I said, it assists us as well in terms of getting more attention and notoriety for the podcast. But in any event, we thank you and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. So today, I want to get into the conversation of home ownership with a twist. Let me give a little caveat with a twist. So initially, what I wanted to talk about was the ongoing debate that between home ownership and renting. And I've talked about this before in the podcast. And I want to talk about this because, just like you guys, I'm sure, I'm watching YouTube and I'm seeing social media posts, and it just chuckles me when I see these air quotes, for those of you who are listening, these financial gurus who, with the caption on their videos, "I'm a multi-millionaire and I rent." And, it's always an argument for why renting is better than home ownership. So initially I was going to kind of revamp that discussion and kind of give the benefits of home ownership versus renting. Cause I am, be very clear, I'm a proponent of home ownership. I own homes. And so, home ownership is the way to go as far as I'm concerned. And really with the argument, I don't even want to talk about the financial aspect of it, because I think it's, of course, that's the low level conversation, in my opinion, not to offend anyone, but, whether or not it's cheaper to own or cheaper to rent, there are so many more other benefits that come with home ownership, which again, I was going to talk about today, and I will. But what I specifically want to talk about is kind of what's going on in the housing market, because I don't know how much of the audience knows, but there's definitely been a shift in the housing market. Specifically, there is I don't want to say it's a new concept. It's a relatively new concept, but probably in the last 10 years, but definitely has accelerated since the pandemic. There's a concept that's called rent to build, or build to rent, excuse me. And build to rent is basically, you have corporations and even a large institutional investors who are building whole communities, like literally whole single family communities, with the intention of building those homes just to rent them out. So they're not building them, for individuals to, take out a mortgage and start the process of individual home ownership. They're building these communities specifically to rent them out. And I got to that part of the conversation because one of the detractions, or one of the arguments for home ownership, is that it's expensive to get in. And it is expensive to get in. I'm not going to lie to you, but It's getting even increasingly more expensive because of obviously the higher interest rates, which many people know about higher interest rates of these days, because if you do research, you would find out that back in the 80s and late 70s, interest rates were double digits. So when people talk about it 7%, like, well, do your research. But in any event, housing has become expensive not only because of that, but because of low inventory. But one of those reasons, because of the low inventory, is because of this new concept, which is called build to rent. And this is affecting many people. So I want to talk about that today, and then I'm going to touch a little bit on the benefits of home ownership as well, beyond the financial benefits. So that was kind of a long-winded explanation, but I kind of want to talk about those two topics. The build to rent phenomenon or build to rent phase that we're in terms of the housing market, and then also talk about the benefits of home ownership. So I want to play this piece from WSB-TV in Atlanta, or in Georgia, I think. But in any event, they did a piece on this build to rent, and they talked about the how this is affecting that community. So I want to play that, and then I'll kind of talk a little bit more about the build to rent phenomenon. So let me play this, and then we'll go on from there.
Signs in front yards showing not a home for sale, but for rent.
Atlanta has more of these types of properties than the next couple of metro areas combined.
These properties are single-family homes owned by corporations, not people. And Atlanta is the #1 location for these houses in the entire country, according to GSU professor Taylor Shelton.
And let me just stop that there. So, as you heard, Atlanta is the #1 market for these type of homes. I just want to insert this little caveat, and then I'll jump back into the video. Atlanta is also the home of the second largest population of Black Americans in the United States. But let me go back to the video, and then I'm going to go further into that to explain why I'm making that point.
Just a decade or so ago, none of these companies even existed.
But a recent study found that just 3 companies, known to customers as Progress Residential, Invitation Homes, and Main Street Renewal, own more than 19,000 homes in the metro area.
The homes that most of these companies are buying are exactly the kind of starter homes that 15, 20, 30 years ago would have been first-time home buyers.
And in certain areas, these corporations can own most of the homes in a neighborhood. Take this street, where every single house you see is owned by Invitation Homes, built to rent and not to buy, impacting the entire market as a whole.
And so that is super important to point out. Now, here, this reporter is on a street where every home is owned by a corporation. This is, well, I have to do this every time, because those of you who listen to this podcast for quite some time, you already know I say everything in America costs money, everything. So they're renting these, they're building these beautiful homes, neighborhoods, landscaped, beautiful. And they're building these homes for people to rent. Now, they're not doing this because, out of the kindness of their heart. They're doing this because in Atlanta, specifically, and this is going on nationwide, but I specifically want to focus in Atlanta. You have some of the largest populations of African Americans throughout the country. Historically, and even currently today, application denial in terms of mortgage applications, you have African Americans that are denied at a higher rate in terms of mortgage applications. I'm reading a study here from what's it, National Realtor? Yeah, National Association of Realtors. And on here, one of the challenges why there is this issue with affordability for homes, especially amongst people of color, is because there is a higher denial rate in terms of mortgages. So I'm going to circle back to that Atlanta story in a second. But here on the National Association of Realtors site, it says Black and Hispanics experience higher denial rates for mortgage applications compared to their white and Asian counterparts. Data shows that mortgage applications were denied at a rate of 26% for blacks and 22% for Hispanic applicants, which is a stark contrast to the 16% denial rate for white applicants and 15% denial rate for Asian applicants, right? So again, I'm pointing that out because you then take this data, you then take the story that I was talking about in Atlanta with the rent to buy, and then you combine that with this rhetoric that you see on social media about it's better to rent than it is to buy a home. And I mean, I don't, for me, I go, well, clearly there's a campaign here to get people to rent more, right? Because they, and I say they, these corporations and other people know the ultimate benefit of home ownership and what that plays in the lives of people across the board, but specifically for people of color. But let me finish playing this story from Atlanta, and then I'm going to go into some of the benefits of home ownership, because I want to finish playing this piece because they interview, so I'm going to finish playing it because they interview a gentleman, and I want you to hear what he says, and then I'll kind of, discuss some of the benefits of home ownership and then go from there. So let me finish playing this because I'm off on a tangent.
It makes it impossible to find a deal.
Jordana Haig says the end result has led to higher prices as corporations have bought up much of the supply of homes, pushing up house prices while also allowing them to control the rent.
That's problematic because there should be more competition to keep prices reasonable.
But for others like DeMar Madison, these rental homes allow folks to try out home ownership without the full commitment.
You need a new roof? You call invitational. Tell them, hey, I need a new roof. So I think it just varies. I think it depends on the person.
And that gentleman, again, let me just say this. It truly is on a per person basis, right? And I don't want to just generalize it and say everyone needs to own a home. Everyone has a different goal that they're trying to achieve. Everybody has a different need. So I don't want to sit here and just say everybody needs to own a home, because that's not the case, right? It really is dependent on your circumstances. But, and I put a but on there, when we get into this argument of whether or not it's better to own or rent, moving away from the financial aspect of it, right? Because this gentleman just said, well, I need a roof. Just call the rental company. I need something done, call the rental company. And that is a cost savings. Don't get me wrong. Roofs are expensive. Trust me, I know. But at the same time, moving away from that aspect of it, as the woman said previous to that gentleman, when you have a shift in the market like this, where corporations are now owning the homes, it puts a huge disadvantage on individuals to A, own a home, B, to even have great control over their finances, because as the woman said, and as it was reported in this story, what happens is now these corporations not only control the value of these homes, right? But they also control the rents in these areas. So now these skyrocketing rents are coming up, combined with the increase in home values, and now you have many people who are unable to access or have the ability to have to enjoy home ownership. And affordability is becoming the bigger issue and the bigger story in terms of home ownership than it is just the discrimination, as I talked about, which I call discrimination, based on the National Association of Realtors, with the higher amount of people of color being denied for mortgage applications. But affordability becomes a challenge now because with higher rents, you as a renter, even if you want to own a home, you now become strapped financially because you're paying so much more in rents, and rents in terms of their increases can have substantially larger increases than increases in mortgage, because I've heard people say, well, your mortgage increases, well, property taxes go up. Yeah, but it is nothing like a rental property deciding that, especially if it's not rent stabilized or rent controlled, just deciding that they are going to up the rents, or if they want to bring a higher income of a higher tenant, or a tenant that brings in a higher income in, deciding that they're going to then up it so they can get rid of certain tenants. But I've spent way more time than I thought I was going to spend on it. But that's build to rent. And of course, I'll put all that information into the links as well. Just really quick, in terms of some of the benefits of owning a home, and I just want to hit on that real quick, and then we'll close out. I'm reading an article here from the Habitat for Humanity for Chicago, and there are several different studies out there. They all kind of pulled information from a Harvard study that was done on the benefits of home ownership beyond the financial part of it. And that's what I want to really hit on. So here on this article, it says homeowners have a significant health advantage over renters on average. It says homeowners are 2.5% more likely to have good health. It also says families who live in quality housing experience fewer health issues, also dedicate much more of their income on health and take more preventative measures to stay well, and can because, again, of home ownership. In terms of social and education, it says children who remain in consistent learning environments are more likely to graduate from high school and college. And again, this has a lot to do with the stability of owning a home. I mean, typically homeowners are in homes for, more than 5 years, sometimes 10 years, sometimes 2 decades, depending on, what the situation is. And a lot of times that plays a huge role in terms of what ultimately the effect will be, especially if you have kids. So that's another social benefit. Also, it says homeowners are more likely to become involved in neighborhood groups and also join civic associations. I think one of the big things is that homeowners are more likely to vote in local elections. It says 65% of homeowners vote in local elections compared to 54% of renters. And that's because as a homeowner, you have some skin in the game, right? And you really are concerned of not just what's going to happen today, but what is my neighborhood, what is my community going to look like 5 years, 10 years from now, because I'm going to be here. And that's a benefit that the community and the homeowner enjoys as a result of home ownership. It then goes on to say children living in homes, in terms of math achievements, they've had higher reported math scores, reading scores, and even behavioral problems are not as high for children who are living in homes. And again, this has a lot to do with disability and the camaraderie of living in a community, things of that nature. And then last but not least, it says here neighborhood strength. It goes through a couple of things, but I think the biggest one here says lower crime rates occur when people move less often and are more present in their neighborhoods. Because again, when you are committed to that neighborhood because you purchased a home, you know you're going to be there a long time. You are more protective of that neighborhood, and the people in there. There's a greater camaraderie to ensure that the neighborhood itself, the integrity of the neighborhood itself, stays intact, and provides the benefit for everyone in the community. So those are just some of the benefits of home ownership. Again, I didn't even talk about the financial aspect of it because it's been argued so much. And again, it does come down to what the individual needs are and what you can or cannot do. But I want to definitely put this on the radar for those of you who may be thinking about home ownership, or if you're renting, whether you're going to continue renting. But also I want to talk about for those of you who might feel like, man, it's really getting rough out here. What's going on? Because there was story after story of individuals who saying that they can't find a home. They've been approved for mortgages, but they can't find a home because the pricing is too steep or the rents are too high. And a lot of it has to do with this build to rent that's going on here in the United States, with many of these corporations who are building single family homes to rent, which is really putting a strain on the market in terms of competition and making housing extremely unaffordable for many people. But that is my time for today. So, I hope that this information was valuable. As always, if you want to leave a comment, you can reach me on any of the social media platforms. You can reach me at I am Trey Evans on all social media. Or if you want, you can reach us at the People's Voice Podcast, which is our show Instagram account, the People's Voice Podcast. So that is my time for today. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.
I am